fact that every government wants to communicate their achievements to the citizens. I think we've seen that with Kufuor's Ghana Now and Then. Whether it was blue, they also put it in some book B or something. So then we've have the Green Book and the Bahamas. So if they also decided to do more fanfare of it, well, you can't take it away from them, though.
Okay.
Maybe you can talk about the cost element, but it's all.
But the cost element is an issue that we should be raising. Where that money is coming from is also an
but
issue.
if we have a finance minister telling us severally that we don't have money, and of course we don't have it, so you go borrowing. Just within the week, we went to borrow how much? $3 billion.
Yeah.
So we don't have the money. So if we think we have the money to go and spend on those things, fair enough.
Because I'm raising that question because if you recall under Mahama, that was the critical issue when the Green Book came out.
Yeah.
They were raising questions about where the money was coming from because they felt that was for political reasons, was to benefit the NDC party, not the generality of Ghanaians.
Yeah.
So should we be asking the same questions when it comes to the resource fair? Because it seems like they are doing this not because of us. They are doing this so that it benefits them politically.
Yeah, of course. But even if you listen to the statement of the information minister prior to the event, he essentially said there's no way they are not going to trumpet their achievements. So it's not for the benefit of the ordinary Ghanaian, because the ordinary Ghanaian, when you're doing something to benefit them, they will see it. If I have water in my community, I will know. If I have a tar road that I don't have to inhale dust every day, I know. So you don't have to come and project anything or do any fanfare anywhere to tell me that you've done this or that for me. I will have seen it and I'll be appreciative. So beyond that, I don't see the need really, So essentially, it's for their benefit, not to the benefit of the. Question is, what would the benefits be to the ordinary Ghanaian?
Okay.
That you go and then organize yourself somewhere. Already you are paid. Ghanaians pay you to do the work. You go and sit there. Is it part of doing any work? Is that part of your job description?
So the question is whether that's the best productive use of their time.
So it's not a productive use of time. If you're coming to tell me are those not the same things that we hear them say every day? Yeah. So why then do you have to go and the time that we paid you to work, you go and sit there the whole day and tell me that I've done this for you? Am I blind that I don't know what you've done for me? Essentially, that's what they are telling Ghanaians, that you are blind. You've not seen what we've done for you. So you have to reiterate it and tell you on TV, radio, and whatever. So for me, I don't see what benefits to the ordinary Ghanaian.
Well, essentially, that position may also be challenging in a way because sometimes you realize that those who do economics, I've always said that sometimes when you work on what they call the macroeconomic fundamentals, it takes time for it to reflect in what they call the microeconomy. Or I don't know. Or then
on the macro. Yes, but of course, you see, there are certain things that will take time for the reflection to show. That is there. There are other things that you can see the results right there and then.
Okay.
Those are the things that the ordinary Ghanaian is looking at. For instance, you can't tell me that you need to what do we call it, achieve macro stability or anything to put up a road. How does that even work? Are you saying that when you put up a road somewhere, the person or the citizens in that community, they will not see the road? You have to come and tell them that, because of these micro indicators, that's where the road is. No. It's instant. When you put up a water supply in a community, when they say it, they will say it. So it's two levels of, or work when it comes to government. Are you getting it? Ghanaians are not too much concerned about the intangibles that they keep. Look, if the tangibles, infrastructure, which covers almost every facet of our society and our everyday life. How many minutes did they spend on it? 2 point something minutes, or is it 2% of the entire time that they spent talking? Almost 2 hours of talk. You spent 2 minutes, less than 2% of that time, which is less than 10 minutes, right? So how do you then say that you are telling Ghanaians something you've done that they have to wait for the result? No. When they said they've done free SHS, okay, they've done free SHS. Haven't Ghanaians see it? They've seen it. Do you have to come and tell Ghanaians that, yes, I've done, or I'm giving you free SHS? No. Are you getting the point I'm trying to make? So at times that argument is moot when you look at it logically from a logic perspective. It doesn't really hold water anyway.
So first of all, you need an understanding of exactly what they are doing, why they are doing it.
Yes.
And whose interest
no,
they are doing
but
it.
you see, the point, the another point that you can, or the point that you're trying to make, that you need to understand certain things for it to, for instance, what can you say that they said they are doing that we have to wait for the result? Give me an example of it.
For example, where in the issue of the financial sector cleanup, you've raised several questions about the approach. They are saying that their approach is the best approach, just that because it was a big bank approach, it will take time for you to see that that work was necessary. In the meantime, people will be feeling the pinch of it.
Let's even look at the banking sector. Okay, when you look at the report from BOG, the recent one at January ending, okay, you can't claim that a cleanup that you've done in the sector, which ended, what do we call it? When was that? Last year. Even the banks even ended way earlier. Is it 2018, right?
Yes.
Or early 2019, which it means that we've almost done a year. So if you look at the indicators, liquidity ratio, capital adequacy ratio, those things should be something that as soon as let's even give or take 6 months period, the results should be showing.
You should be seeing the results by now.
That okay, now the banking sector have enough liquid. But then if you spend billions of cedis only to achieve, let's say, a percentage point or even less than a percentage point, how do you justify that? And to keep, you see, what is more annoying is that, and more insulting to intelligence of most people who understand this thing, is that they keep saying that that's the only approach that they have to take.
Yeah. They keep saying that's the best approach.
Let me refer them to the World Economic Meltdown in 2007, 2008. Is that the approach that the United States, for instance, they were the hardest hit? Is that the approach that they adopted? No.
But they started with that approach, didn't they?
They didn't start with that approach.
They allowed Lehman Brothers to collapse.
No, they were out and out before the thing blew up.
Okay.
So at that point, there was nothing anybody could do. It was just like, for instance, if I was DKM was a bank, you know, DKM virtually shut down.
It was going under.
It was under before even we Ghanaians even got to know about it. So it's basically the same thing that happened. So there was nothing government could do at that point. That was why quickly government moved in, raised bonds to buy in the toxic assets. So what they do is that they quickly restructure the management of those financial institutions, have a substantial stake, which they can control for a period of time. So they borrow the money, they raise bonds, put it in, that adequately recapitalize those institutions. Okay. Then when they realize everything, or at a point that everybody agreed that things has normalized, then they float back the shares to the private investor, because government is not in business to do business anyway. So they float back those shares, and they made almost about 17 billion at the end of the day. They made about $17 billion profit.
Government has made 17
billion profit. They've invested almost about $400 billion into.
They got back the 400 billion.
They've got it back, and I'm talking about by 2010, they have gotten back their what do we call it?
The
over 400 billion. I think it's about 473 in total bonds that they raised to invest. they've gotten that back and made a profit of about $17 billion. Now, here lies in Ghana's situation. You could have done the same thing. If you said it's a management problem, you could have done the same thing. You went and borrowed. So far, we are close to about 20 billion cedis, isn't it? Or even 21 billion.
For the banking sector alone?
Yes.
For the cleanup?
Or for the cleanup, the entire cleanup. Now, what would have gone wrong if you borrow those money and then you use it as equity, had equity holdings in those institutions, restructure the management? It's an investment that you've done, right? Then, when you realize that things have normalized, like they are saying now, it means that then now government will start floating out those shares to private investors to now to buy in. And we start recouping our money, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've not done that. You've created job losses. It's not the business or the responsibility of any private individual to create jobs for your citizens. It's your responsibility. So when you're doing or taking any action, you have to take into cognizance some of those things. That's why, those are some of the reasons why the US did what they did. Coupled with the fact that those are indigenous institutions that have existed for so many years. Okay, now, you've created job losses by closing and merging some of those things. You've borrowed money. Now you have a debt of over 20 billion standing on our books that you don't have any means of paying back because you are just paying off people. You created job losses, created debt that is hanging. We've no idea how you are going to. So how can you say that is the most reasonable option to take? Where you even have a blueprint. If you had followed that blueprint that on a larger scale worked, then you come and tell Ghanaians that that's the best thing and anybody criticizing it doesn't have any other option. How does that sound reasonable or sensible to anybody who understands the issue?
Are you surprised that the vice president is the one advancing that position? Because
yeah, but if you realize they are the only people making that argument, if you so many economists and financial analysts, when you've interviewed a lot of people, is that the recommendation they made? It wasn't. And it's so surprising that they are the only people who see that that's the only option. How can you create job losses and then create debt on the head? Now, if you've paid off depositors, you've paid them off with their money, where will you get the money to pay your loan, the loan that you've raised? Already you say that the banks or the institution don't have money. Their assets, as you even see, that they are floating, we've been told that it's not even up to how many billion. It means that you are not even going to recoup even 20% of the total amount that you've invested in these institutions or used to pay off this debt. So the question then is, how are you going to pay the loans that you've taken or the bonds that you floated and is hanging on the neck of Ghanaians? How can you go borrowing without knowing how you are going to pay back?
And there seems not to be a master plan as to how to bring those who have lost their jobs back to the job market.
There's none, actually. You understand? So that's why you don't even go the way they did. By now, as you're claiming that things have normalized, then you've stabilized, you've saved jobs, you would have now started floating these shares for private investors to come in. Then you as a government, you withdraw. Then you start recouping your investment. You pay off the loans that you've taken to clean up the sector. You are free. You made some profit in there. You have some additional money to spend on other critical infrastructure or spending.
But Abel, the people who were involved in this, you're talking about the vice president himself. You're talking about the senior minister, Yao Safomafo. Yes. You're talking about someone like Dr. Yao Akutose. You're talking about Professor Jan Bafo, some of the people in the economic management team. You're talking about Mr. Ken Ofoyata, who has been working in the financial sector for long.
Yes.
But are you saying that they didn't know this or they didn't plan properly before going in?
Either there are a couple of issues at stake. Whether they know and it's deliberate that they have to do that. Because that's the way we want to go about it. But because I'm not saying anything beyond what nobody knows. So these are public knowledge. You don't have to even be a student of economics or financial management
to know this.
To know that this is what happened. This is how the US and the rest of the world used to, clean up the financial mess that happened or the credit crime that happened in between 2007 to 2008. It's a commonplace knowledge. So it's not as if I'm conjuring any solution from anywhere. And this worked. So how are you then saying that if it's in a very large economy like that, it worked? What about our minuscule economy in Ghana, about $50 billion? How is it not going to work? I get it. So that's why people will end up saying, okay, this is a deliberate attempt to push some people out of the system, because now you've done that, you've created job losses, you've created debts that is hanging on the neck of Ghanaians. Question I would love you and your fellow journalists should be asking is, how are they going to pay those monies back?
Well, Albert Wotorgbui is my guest on the show today. He's a research analyst with the Center for Socioeconomic Studies, and he's been speaking to us about some of the things that Dr. Bawumia said at the resource fair that was held in Kumasi a bit earlier in the week. Well, we were just dealing with the financial sector, but Albert, there are questions that have been raised about the time he dedicated to some of the things he talked about also. But do those also give us an indication as to where government has been paying attention to?
Oh, in a way, but then is it actually a paying of attention? Do you have the breakdown there? Maybe we can take it from there one by one.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I can locate that right now. But I think. Well,
I have it somewhere. Where is it? Okay. So, introduction took 7 minutes. So
introduction took 7 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. So compare 7 minutes to 3 minutes spent on infrastructure.
3 minutes. So there was more time spent
on introducing the entire thing
than
infrastructure.
Okay.
Okay.
So clearly, let's stay there. That tells you that they don't have a lot to say when it comes to infrastructure. Okay. So they admit there that they have not done so much work in the field of infrastructure. Is that how we should be reading?
Yeah, that is as simple as that you've not done any work actually to even say that you are. Yeah. Now, but even look at the reality of it. When they were coming in, they campaigned on the backbone that NDC's about 5.4, then it's reduced to about 4.5% GDP. Capital expenditure to GDP in 2006 is terrible.
Yeah, and it was too low.
Yeah, it was too low. Then they came in. Then the highest they did was last year, 2019, which was 1.8. So really, what are you going to talk about? That I've condemned somebody's 4.5, the lowest of 4.5, and I'm able to do only 1.8 maximum. So really, there was nothing to talk about. So it was virtually non-existent. They've not done anything. Are you getting it? Yeah, so that's why they wouldn't have much. So then the economy, they spend about 35
Before you even go to the economy, what does that say about, because for somebody like you who's looking at the things that government does, any direct benefits on the citizenry, that should worry you, because infrastructure is the key thing that is key to boosting an economy.
Yeah, but that's your entire economy rests on infrastructure. Now, for instance, when we talk about infrastructure, maybe we talk about just the roads and the whatever. Now, the amount of money invested in even the oil infrastructure, oil and gas infrastructure, if we didn't have that by now, we wouldn't be reaping the benefits that we are reaping from the oil and gas sector. Okay. Assuming monies were not invested in Ghana gas, for instance, we will still be struggling with gas. Are you getting it? If FPSO, Nkrumah and Eze John Kufuor weren't bought or monies weren't invested in them, we will still be struggling with our crude production by now. So you see how spending infrastructure is critical too. It permeates every facet of your economy. When the roads are terrible, your local economy also suffers. Goods are stuck on farms that they can't cart it into the market centers. So it's everywhere. When your health infrastructure is terrible, it's the same thing. When you realize our middle level education, high school infrastructure is terrible. So you see the struggling that the kids are going through in the SHS, right? So for infrastructure, it's critical to the survival of, the very survival of your economy. So when that is lacking, and that's the problem that a lot of people have with the spending pattern or behavior of this particular government, that they are not thinking about spending in the productive sectors of the economy.
Okay.
It's always about borrowing to put in something that will dissipate quickly, and then that's it. You understand? If we hadn't even built Terminal 3, would we have been talking about success of a year of return? We wouldn't have, because a lot of people will still be scrambling through that tiny international terminal that we had earlier.
Where they are focusing on expenditure alone is a huge issue.
Yeah, that's the huge issue. If we've not expanded Tema Port or Takoradi Port, we wouldn't be raking in revenues at the port that you said you've increased revenue. The question is, if the port wasn't expanded and it was still like that, how do you bring in more vessels to clear? You see how the whole thing works.
Isn't that worrying? Because the three biggest infrastructure projects that this government that's been currently undertaking right now were all inherited. You're talking about the Tema Motorway interchange, Pokwasi.
Yes.
You're talking about the one close to us here.
Yes.
All those were inherited.
Yeah, so that's why they can't include it in, and you realize that they've actually not put any money into it, so it can't reflect in what they've spent. Are you getting the point? Yeah, so it's as simple as that.
Let's move
Somebody
on.
else invested in that before you came, so you can now put it back that I'm investing or I'm doing it, so it has to reflect in my spending. No, the expenditure has passed.
Let's move on to the issue of the economy, because it looks like they spent quite a considerable amount of time on the economy. Does it make sense to you as to why they are doing that? Is that to also say that perhaps the Ghanaian is not getting what they are doing about the economy?
No, but if you look at the economy, there are a lot of issues, because then they have to take it. What they did was take it indicator by indicator. Are you getting it? So, and they spend a considerable length of time on each indicator. For if you take inflation, for instance, if you take let's say external development, foreign exchange, international reserves, they spend considerable time on each of the indicator. So that's why you see that they spend a lot of time on that. So we can look at some of those things and see. If you take, for instance, inflation, and most of these things, when you come back, you realize that there are a lot of distortions and discrepancies in what they said. But the most critical of it is deficit, and then the primary balance.
Okay.
Now, you see, previously, or when you take expenditure, the total expenditure of government, you realize that we have below the line and above the line expenditure. Certain expenditures are always treated above the line and some below. So interest payment, you can say, is this and that. Now, what they are doing is that they look at some of the expenditures and say, okay, this one, if we put it below the line, it will reduce our deficit figure. So let's put it there, and then say, okay, that's below the line, then the deficit will come. And that's what even Banarity has been talking about it, and IMF have also disagree that they are not complying with the international standard reporting standards. Okay. Now, so for instance, the money that they went borrowed and then spent on the banking sector cleanup, they are treating it below the line. So they will tell you, okay, it's not part of the actual expenditure.
Okay.
So, but then and IMF is also saying you have to treat it because you spend the money on the account, the consolidated account. So, or it has to reflect in it. And they are also saying no. And if you reflect, you realize that deficit figures were about 7% and not the 4.8
to go up automatically.
Yes, it's to go up. That's why you have
so
IMF.
That alone have accounted for an extra 3%.
An extra 3%. That's together with the energy sector, expenditure as well. So that will have accounted for about 3%. That's what they've slashed it off, and it will have also reflected in the primary balance, because primary balance simply means that when you take out your arrears payment or interest payments, what is left as total expenditure is your and then your revenue. When you balance it up, that's your primary balance. And that's a huge amount of money. So you realize that the primary balance wouldn't be showing positive like the way they are saying. So they move about 3% of expenditure out of 3% of GDP expenditure out of above the line into below the line. So, and a lot of people, including the IMF, have issue with that, and they keep repeating it. So, but then in the end, it's Ghanaians that are feeling it anyway. So, then another point is even if you take their own reports, what Bawumia presented, you look at the GDP. He was quoting different figures in the explanation and in his, chart.
Okay.
There are different figures as well. Because, for instance, if you take the GDP figures for 2008, for instance, he was talking about. Let me just read.
So even in the presentation, you're saying that
there are a lot
on
of
the
errors.
charts,
Yeah, there are
and what you were saying were
errors
different.
in the listing. When you look at Israel, for instance, economic growth was on decline trend, has been restored. Growth for 2017 was 8.1, 6.8 in 2008, and projected 7% in 2019. Then when you come down, non-oil growth has increased from 4.6 in 2016 to 5.8 in 2018, and projected to 5.9 in 2019. But then when you look at the chart or the figure the bar chart, for instance, the figures are different. You see oil revenue to be 6.3 for 2018 and 6.5 non-oil revenue for 2018. Which is, so yesterday I was asking the question, which of the figures do you work with really?
Okay.
Are you getting it? Then, so that was some of the distortions in whatever you presented.
So
then,
even the figures that you was presenting were questionable.
Yes. Then you look at the inflationary figures that the CPI that he presented as well. In earlier last year or middle of last year, the inflation base was the inflation figures was rebased. Are you guys seeing how the economy was rebased? You can rebase the inflation composition as well. The reason being that maybe more goods and services has come to add since the last base year. Are you getting it? To the basket. So when you look at the recent rebase now, they've increased the number of items in the basket to more about 300 plus or so. Okay. And then the number of markets in which those surveys are taken have also been expanded.
Okay.
So the caveat that when you see, you can clearly read from there. The statistical service, the Ghana Statistical Service themselves clearly warn that once the rebase is done, when you take that figure, when you can read it to your listeners, you can't compare it to any year before it.
They said the rebase CPI, base year 2018 for August 2019, is not comparable to the old CPI series with base year 2012.
So simply, you can't compare it to any year before 2019.
Okay.
Are you getting it? But
so he's committing a huge fallacy.
Yes. So, but we have a vice president who is an economics throwing that into people and then doing. There's a whole lot of presentation on inflation, comparing figures, and if you have to do it, it means that you have to introduce a lot of levelers, moving averages, and into it to smoothen like the entire base, and it's a bit complex to do. And you've not done that, then you just take the raw figures and then start comparing. You realize that before the rebasing of the inflation figures, it was about 9 point something.
Okay.
Subsequently, it's come up a little bit. So if it were to be so, by now, we would have been having double-digit inflation.
Okay. So the situation would have been bad if you're using the...
But when it was rebased, it dropped to about 2 percentage points. Okay. It was 9 point something. When it was rebased, it dropped to about 7 point something. Is that not it?
Okay.
Yes. So, and then we are having about 8 point something now.
So it's going up. So it would have been still around 10%.
So it would have been in double digit, not a single digit inflation that he's talking about. So for him to disingenuously do that kind of analysis and comparison, you can, questions at times his professionalism when it comes to some of these things. Because it's not done.
But can't you say
the caveat has been there? So why then do you do it?
Can't you say essentially that then that is where my issue of the fact that this was a political event comes?
Yes, pure and simple
like
like
that. It
that.
had nothing to do with telling a particular story that's supposed to help the Ghanaian, but there's more to do. We're telling a story that helps the government.
Exactly. So there's nothing in it for the Ghanaian. The Ghanaian is simple saying, when you construct a road for me, I'll say it. When you give me water, I'll say it. When you give me electricity, I'll say it. Are you getting it? And for instance, that's lie about they reducing. They are the only government that has ever reduced, and I think a lot of people have proven that it was a lie. In 2013 it was done. 2015 I think it was also done. So it was. So you look at the number of inconsistencies in the presentation and the number of pure fabrications, and and statistically impossible, things that
statistically impossible.
Yes, but the statistical service is saying that we don't do that.
Yeah. So he was doing what
do it. You go and do it. So
statistical impossibility.
Yes. So and when you do it, it means that you are indulging in some statistical gymnastics or something. And when you do that, it calls into credibility your professionalism as an economist of national analyst. You understand?
But that is serious. We're talking about the vice president and the chairman of the economic management.
If you like, you can open to the website of the Ghana Statistical Service right now. It's boldly written before you even go to the CPI figures, the inflationary figures. It's boldly written there. When you open it, it's still there, so that nobody will go doing that kind of comparison that he did. If you want to do it, then introduce smoothing averages to smoothen out the base.
Okay.
It means that you have to introduce a lot of moving averages now to have the series in with a common denominator or common base.
Okay.
Before you can, and
you can be able to compare properly.
But there's nowhere that he's done that. He's not introducing any smoothing averages. He just went ahead, took the raw figures that the CSS service has warned about, and then start doing comparison. You don't do that. And that's why he keeps, before consistently people start bashing, they used to take the raw, the old base GDP, and then start comparing with the rebased GDP of theirs. If you remember, people talk a lot about it before they stop.
Now,
it's the same thing they're doing.
One of the issues that came up prominently is always the issue of the free senior high school.
Yeah.
Now, the government keeps telling us that, okay, the money that we would have spent in other areas, we've decided to spend everything on free SHS. We believe in human resource. For the average Ghanaian, what should that mean? Because you are looking at an education policy that you may say benefits everybody, virtually everybody. You have somebody connected to you who is benefiting, even if you are not. Yeah. So how do we deal with that message coming from the government? Because it's very important. They are telling us that because of you, we are not doing so much. But is that accurate? Is that the accurate picture to paint?
But how is that even an issue in the first place? The free SHS funding mostly comes from the oil revenue, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be for there's description to it. Then you decide to spend it on that. The question is, then you tell Ghanaians what you wanted to spend that money for before you diverted it in there. Then if that's so, and then you don't have money for any other thing else, then why then go and borrow? Because for free SHS, you are not borrowing anything to.
So the borrowing is supposed to cater for the shortfall.
Yeah, so if you still go and borrow, then why can you now bring the excuse of that I'm spending the money on free SHS?
Because that rhetoric keeps being repeated.
Yeah, no. There's a difference between having the money there and saying, okay, opportunity cost, let me spend it on this thing, and then not spend it on something else. So it means that when you spend it on this thing, you can't spend it on this. But here is the situation, you spend it on that thing, then you go and borrow money for something else. So why, when you are borrowing, haven't you taken account into this one? Everything that we read in the budget has been budgeted for. It means monies has been allocated, isn't it? And at the end of the day, we overrun the budget. So question anybody should be asking is, everything in there has its own budget amount associated with it. So if you spend this on this, spend it on this. How then do you leave this one down and done, and then still say I've overspent the budget? If you are not doing, for instance, if you've consistently for past 3 years they've budgeted for roads that they've not done, question Ghanaians should be asking is, where did the money for the roads go? Because you've overspent the amount, the budget. It means that you spend the road money somewhere else. You've made allocation for free SHS in the budget, so you can't say you spend it on free SHS. You've not.
Okay.
So the monies that you budgeted for the roads, where did you go? Where did you spend it?
So it doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up. There's no logic to it. It's only sensible or reasonable if you say I've not budgeted for this thing. That's why I've moved this money from here
to that place.
But no, you've allocated money for it right from the beginning. They all have monies allocated.
And you have even overrun that budget, which means you took more money.
You overspent it. So question is, as you've left this one undone, where did the money for this one go? Those are questions Ghanaians should be asking them.
That's a critical question. But 3 years into the implementation of the free senior high school policy, are there any questions still lingering on your minds about exactly what they intended to do, how they have done it, and the things that you think they need to fix immediately?
I think the problem with and the difficulty they are encountering now is purely political.
Okay.
Yes. Reasonably, when you're doing free education, and even in the most advanced of countries, people who have money that we go to them to borrow, they don't run their secondary school, senior high schools as it's free anyway. Then continue running boarding facilities to it. So reasonably, when you say it's free for everybody now, then it means that you phase out the boarding system. You can still have one or two these things that can run. Then you convert some of those boarding facilities into what do we call it? Classroom.
Okay.
So you've saved this thing. That's why people say, and when you look at it critically, that it was rushed. Mahama has a very sensible and intelligent idea that let every community has a secondary school, such that nobody now needs to travel from one community to another to go to school. Are you getting it?
So if you decide to move to another community,
then the cost burden of accommodation there, you have to take care of it. Are you getting it? So when everybody goes to their community school, you don't need to go and be housed anywhere anymore. You stay in your house, wake up, you have parental supervision, you go to school, come back. It's as simple as that's how it's done everywhere around the world. When you go to the US, boarding schools are for private institutions. When you go to the UK, private boarding houses are for, or boarding schools are for private, schools, not for government. Government take care of it. It's they run day. So why do you spend money running, such that even people in a certain community also benefit for the boarding system? Or they have, houses that they could have live in, and people rather who are from outside will now come and rent in the town. Then it defeats the purpose of you saying we need to provide accommodation. Are you getting the point?
I do get it.
If it's solely for those who are from outside, fair enough. But if people within from that community also have to live in the boarding house, then so there's no sense in it. Again, so if they have done that, or they've thought through it carefully, and they have done that, they will have solved the issue of housing, classrooms and all that. Are you getting it? And it will have even saved a lot of cost. Then you can now focus on actually improving the quality of education. But you've not done it, So I think we need to go back to Mahama's, original master plan that every community have their own secondary schools. Then children from every community has to do that. You phase out the boarding system, or if even a school has to run a boarding system, solely for those who can pay.
Okay.
It means that you say, okay, I don't like the school.
So it's a choice that you are making.
Now has to be a choice.
Okay.
Government has provided the equity in the equitable distribution of education infrastructure. Then, when you want to take up that extra cost, then it becomes your choice. Because That's the most reasonable thing to do. It will have eliminated all these things that are associated.
You need to do with the financial struggles.
Yes, it is a fantastic idea that we have to do free education. Yes, but then mode of implementation. I think that's why the calls for review and broader stakeholder consultation is very critical. You know, these things it's not done anywhere. You ask Google or anything. Ask anybody who has lived outside before or goes outside there. If government schools, say senior high schools, run boarding system, no. So it's private schools. You don't do that anywhere.
Well, I do have a friend who is a strong defender of the boarding system, but I don't think maybe he would have. My good friend Afeni will have an issue with the fact that if we can maintain boarding houses, but it must be a choice. If you pick it, you must be ready to.
So you paid for the cost of it. It's as simple. If you say my kid can't go to my community school, then you pay for wherever they have to go. Maintaining, of course, government will take care of the school fees and other these things, but you pay for the boarding facility.
What happens to? But you see, anyway, maybe then I'm raising an issue that has to do with social, a bit more social science than you are used to, because there are people who raise a question about integration. The fact that one of the reasons Nkrumah brought the boarding house system was because they felt that Ghanaians needed to know Ghana.
So are you saying that at primary school level there was no need for integration?
No, but if we can get a few people from
GSS level, there's no need
Tamale.
for. No, let me ask the question. Are you saying that at the basic level there was no need for integration? Like the issue of integration wasn't there when it wasn't boarding. At the university level, the issue of integration, but it's only that 3 years over in between. That's what will do the integration. What is the logic in that?
Well, Albert, we have to be wrapping up. But before you go, I want you to do an assessment of what Dr. Bawumia said. Okay. Are you clear in your mind as to what is your judgment as to what he did, and whether he served? Did you think he served a political purpose?
For political purpose, but you see, political purpose to which people? To the MPP, yes, that's self-aggrandizement and self-adulation. Are you getting it? They went and aggrandized themselves and praised themselves. You are doing self-adulation. It doesn't mean that the broader Ghanaian populace accepted or believed what you say. He said they provided we should proofread it, we should fact check, and we're doing the fact checks, and all of these things are not
the alternative facts that
you look at. Even the I'll go back just a little bit, and the international reserve thing. It's the same thing that we were also having a petroleum revenue back then, isn't it? We don't put it in.
You don't put petroleum in the international
reserve and then report it as our reserve. No, we've not done that. But you are doing it, and you want us to clap for you that you are showing up the international revenue. No. Because simply it's not a money that is available to you as and when. No, there's a condition to it and everything. So
you're saying that even for the political purpose of reaching out to the average Ghanaian, they failed?
No, but how many people actually believe what you say? If consistently you've been lying to the people and they've come to see that most of the things that you say is not true or they are not true, is it today that you come and tell them something else that they will believe it? It's the same thing that they trumpeted. And the IMF consistently have also said, has raised issue about the reserve, actually. And anybody at all can always go and raise bond and come and show up the reserve for a few months, and when it depletes, then you see the currency propping up again.
Okay.
And this thing that we're saying, and people 1 month, people are praising the cities, what. We all know that people are not traveling to China. China is one of, if not our biggest trading partner as it is now. Everybody goes to China to bring things. Are you getting it? So they are not traveling. Nobody. Have you seen anybody going to China? No, because of this lockdown, and it's affecting not only Ghana but the entire world economy.
So the city will look stronger.
Yes. So based on that, people are not demanding for dollar, and then you are using it as what that the city is so strong. No, let international trade between China resumes, and let's see if truly, and let's see if the 3 billion that they went in for is depleting, then or is depleted. Then now we can now say yes, the city is strong.
How would you describe what the vice president did?
It's the same political gimmick, isn't it? if really things are so rosy as it is, the tangibles that the ordinary Ghanaian have to see, you spend 3 minutes on it. How do you? Water is capital expenditure, isn't it? Infrastructure, isn't it? Road infrastructure, health infrastructure, hospitals or clinics or polyclinic infrastructure, isn't it? Access to electricity infrastructure. Is that not it? So if you spend 3 minutes on it, those are the things that the ordinary Ghanaian have to look up to. If you spend 3 minutes on just that, how do you want the people to be happy with you?